Hi there. Welcome to our session on the week one vocabulary. So, I'm going to put a link to this document. If you want to download and follow along with me, you definitely can do that. I'm going to be filling it in as we go, as we talk about the terminology. I thought I'd do a whole separate session on just what do the words mean this week, because we know that vocabulary is very important, that we understand that. Also, it's a huge part of the assessment. So I thought we'd just do a session strictly on vocabulary. So again, I'll put a link so that you can download this document if you want to have it. If you want to just take notes while we're going through the words and the sessions, that's totally fine as well. I want you to have whatever it is you need to be successful. So let's start with the first one. And I said, blank data is comprised of numbers. So, what kind of data is comprised of numbers? And this one is quantitative data. Quantitative data is comprised of numbers. Okay, so we actually have two kinds of data. We have quantitative and we have qualitative. So, quantitative, that's like your age, your number of children. That is a numeric value, right? Qualitative would be more like your eye color, right? That's more, it's not in a number, but it's a characteristic, and that would be a type of data, qualitative. But quantitative is all about numbers. I love number two. It says, because numbers affect our personal and professional lives, we must understand how numbers can be deceptive. We talk about this quite a bit in the first discussion forum for week one about how numbers can be manipulated and used to kind of steer people in a particular direction. And so, if we're going to avoid being deceived by numbers or being led to believe something that's not quite true with numbers, then we have to be aware that this could happen. And so we've got to kind of be on guard, right? And I know I love this one that says it's in our personal and our professional lives. So we have to be on guard all the time to make sure that we know our numbers. We know how numbers are being used, how they can be misused, so that we're aware and we're ready to deal with it should that happen. All right, let's move on to number three then. And a blank does not show the highest or lowest values in a set of data. And this one is an average. So we generally have experience with average and in grade school, right? We've all learned to add them up and divide by the number of items there, okay? But one thing that we know about an average is that many times it masks or it hides the highs and the low values. For instance, if I tell you my average test grade is a 74, that doesn't let you know that I had an 85 on one test, does it? And that's what this question is telling you. It's saying just because we have an average doesn't mean that we know anything about the high or the low values. All we know is just the average of these values. And so sometimes the average, or I'll put another word here that we use for average, and that is the mean. I'm going to put it in parentheses. The mean is another way to say average. Sometimes the mean is not used because it has this limiting factor of it kind of hides the highs and lows. Another thing to know about the average is that it can be pulled by a high and a low test grade. For instance, if I look at my test grades and I have 385s, but I have 150, my average is going to be somewhere in the 70s range, even though I had 385s. But that one low score is going to pull down my average quite a bit. Okay, something to keep in mind. Let's move on to number four then. Quantitative data, remember, quantitative data is all about the numbers. Quantitative data can be irrelevant, and it cannot apply if it's out of date or in a different location. Quantitative data can be irrelevant if it's out of date or in a different location. Meaning, if we're looking for average temperature in August, okay, and I live in Texas, my quantitative average temperature in August is not going to apply for someone who lives in Seattle, right? It's in a different location. I can't use the average temperature in Seattle to decide what do I think the average temperature is going to be like here in Texas. Okay, so if no matter, even if it's a number, and a lot of times numeric data, quantitative data is what we want to rely on when we make decisions. We can't rely on that data if it's out of date or if it's in a different location. I don't want to be guessing what the average temperature is going to be here in Texas based on the average temperature in a different location like Seattle. Nothing wrong with Seattle. It's a beautiful city. But the two are different, right? Okay. So let's look at number 5. Numbers can be blank and deceptive. Well, we already said that numbers are deceptive, but we want to look at manipulated. Numbers can be manipulated. For instance, let's say I make lollipops, okay? And I want to show that 9 out of 10 people choose my lollipops, okay? If I go get together a group of 10 6-year-olds, the chances of me getting 9 out of 10 to like my lollipops are pretty high, don't you think? Now, I manipulated the data. I manipulated the situation so that the numbers would come out the way I wanted them to come out. Okay. So we have to be very careful about how we look at numbers, and we have to look behind all those little things like, okay, if 9 out of 10 chose these lollipops, who were the 10 they chose to select to decide? Were they all 6-year-olds? Well, of course, 6-year-olds are probably going to choose to have lollipops and vote for lollipops. Keep that in mind. That's just one situation of how numbers can be manipulated and deceptive so that they come out with the result we want them to come out with. All right, let's look then at number 6. Numbers convey a wide range of information. We have numbers that can relate to anything. Okay. We have numbers that can relate to age. We have numbers that can relate to the number of cups of coffee a person drinks in a day. Shout out to the coffee drinkers, right? Numbers can relay a lot of different information. So we have to be aware, and we want to know how to interpret and analyze that numeric quantitative data so that we can get the information that we need from it. And we've talked a little bit about making sure that the information is presented in a way that we can understand. And sometimes that comes in a chart, and sometimes it comes in a graph, that we can take in the information that we need. And really, let's be honest, because we want to use the information to make good decisions for ourselves, both personally and professionally. So that's what this whole course is about, is interpreting that numeric data, because really we can have numeric data in a lot of different areas. So we want to be prepared. We want to be skillful in that way. All right. So the next one says something refers to attempt to prove data false. This was a word that I had not heard before. I'm going to be completely transparent. This was a new word to me. It's called proofiness. Proofiness is an attempt to prove data false. Okay. I don't want you to think of this in a negative light. I want you to think of this more in light of I want to test out the data. Because if it is a true set of data, it should be able to stand up to testing. And if it is not true data, then I don't want to use it to make good decisions in my business or in my personal life. So, this process of proofiness, of testing out that data, going through the situation with almost a fine tooth comb to make sure that it does speak to true and valid data, I think is actually a good thing. Because again, if it is true data, it should stand up to the test. But the word proofiness, that was new to me. I don't know if that's new to you as well. All right, number 8. Resource blank consists of deciding which resource to use to accomplish a task. And the word here is allocation. Resource allocation consists of deciding which resource to use to accomplish a task. I think this one is a good example of, if you go into the kitchen and you want to get some soup out of a pot, okay? You could use a spatula to get soup out of a pot. You could even use a fork to get soup out of a pot. But if I want to allocate the best resource to get soup out of the pot, I probably should use a ladle, right? The little one with the handle with the little cup like on it. That's what resource allocation is about. It's about taking the tools, the resources that you have, and allocating them to a particular task so that we can get the task done. Now, we can allocate resources in a way that gets the job done in an inefficient way. That'd be like using a fork to get soup out of a pot. Or we can be wise in our decision making and use a ladle that's more efficient. It's built for that purpose, and we happen to have one, right? So we can use it as well. All right, let's keep going then. Number 9. Resource allocation helps us to achieve our goals effectively. And we just talked about that with the ladle and the fork trying to get soup out of the pot. When we spend the time to allocate our resources effectively and efficiently, we end up completing our task, moving us closer and closer to our goal. All right. Number 10, land, blank, and capital are an organization's most important resources. Land, labor, right? This is the people working in the business there. Land, labor, and capital. Now, capital, remember, that's your cash, right? That's your money. Those are the organization's most important resources. So the land, the buildings that the company has, the labor, that's the people that work in the company, and then of course the money. Those are the top 3 most important resources for any organization or business. All right. Number 11 here. And this one is, we just talked about this one, right? Capital is the physical resources of a business, including money. Okay. And then number 12, we also talked about this one, right? Blank is the natural resource or location of a business. That's the land. And so, how a business allocates these resources, how they decide in a building how much of the space to use for storage, how much of the space to use for workspace for employees, how much space to use for shipping. All of that is important and falls under the allocating of resources. How many people are going to be on this particular job site? That is allocating resources in a business. And then how much money are we going to invest on the marketing of this product, on design for this product? You can see how all of these decisions have to be made, and knowing how much to use when is very important. It can make or break the business. So we'll have to do that as well, right? I'll give you an instance from my personal life. It's going to seem very, very small, but it really is the truth, right? We have 5 kids. And at one point in time, well, currently we have 4 at home. One is at college. So at home, we have myself, my husband, and then my oldest daughter who's at home can drive, right? We got 3 drivers and there's 6 of us. So all of our kids are involved in activities, right? Baseball, volleyball, all kinds of stuff. Knowing how to allocate those 3 drivers is very important to make sure we get our goals accomplished at the right time, at the getting everybody where they need to go. And so maybe I'm taking 2 with me and dropping 1 off, and then I'm driving someone else somewhere else. Like allocating the logistics of that. Shout out to the mom schedulers who keep up with their kids' schedules, right? But that's a huge part of allocating the resource. But we have to do that in our business too, right? I have to decide, okay, I'm going to put this designer on this task, and then they're going to jump over to this task and join this team, right? All of those moving parts we have to stay on top of to make sure that we're working most effectively to achieve our goals. Okay, number 13, sorry. There can be many challenges when determining how to allocate limited resources. So, in my driver situation, if we were all drivers, it wouldn't be very hard to allocate the resources, right? Everybody just get in your vehicle and go. But we don't have an infinite number. Everybody's not a driver, and we don't have that many cars. So, it gets to be there's challenges that I have to think about when the resources are limited, when we don't have an infinite amount of cash, when we don't have an infinite amount of drivers, when we don't have an infinite amount of cars. So it's a jigsaw puzzle, right? Trying to figure that out and do it in the most efficient manner. Let's look at 14. When resources are limited, they should be allocated in the most efficient manner. We just keep saying this over and over and over again, but it is a great opportunity to move parts and pieces in a way that achieves our goal. All right. Now I'm not going to harp on that anymore because I feel like we beat that drum well. All right. We've got 5 more to go. We're doing great. Now remember, these are the week 1 vocabulary terms that I think are going to help you make sure you understand the vocabulary, what the words actually mean, and how we can apply them both in our personal and our professional life. So number 15, blank is a company's revenue minus expenses. And this is the profit. Profit is the revenue minus the expenses. Now think about it. The money you bring in minus the money you send out, that's the money you get to keep. That's really what this is saying, but we're using words. So revenue is the money that comes in, right? Expenses are the money that goes out, and what we get to keep is called the profit. And that is where we focus a lot of our time and energy with businesses is what is your profit? What's your profit margin? You've heard that said before. How does your profit relate to, if you're bringing in $1 million, right? You charged your clients and you're bringing in $1 million, but you had to spend 1.5 million. You didn't end up with any profit, right? That's very important. That's kind of what we're talking about. Gross sales here in number 16, gross sales is the sum of all the sales transaction in a given time period. So if I have gross sales, that would be everything I sold and brought in for selling an item in a particular, let's say, month or in a particular week, whatever the time period is. It's every bit of sales transaction in that time period. Now, number 17 then, blank sales are the total sales minus deductions. So this is net sales. This is your total sales minus your deductions. And we'll talk a little bit about what deductions are. What would constitute a deduction? And your net sales many times are a little bit more reliable piece of information, although there's debate on that. Some people want to know what are your gross sales, but a lot of people focus on the net sales. Okay. Deductions and refunds. Okay, I'm going to make a little difference here. This is discounts. And I'll correct it on yours before I uh, upload a copy for you. So discounts and refunds are both examples of deductions. Had the two D words there. So whether we take a discount, right, the 25% off of our items, or we have to issue a refund because of a damaged product or something of that nature, um, both of these are considered deductions. And so our net sales, going back to number 17, that's our total sales minus any of these discounts or refunds that we have to make there. All right, let's look now at number 19. Blank statement, balance sheet, and cash flow are the main financial statements of a business. So this is income statement. My my stepdad is a tax guy is what I call him, a tax accountant. And I have heard him so many times say, okay, so he's talking to a business client and they says, okay, well, we need to do your tax return. Do you have your income statement, your balance sheet? What about your cash flow? Like the cash flow is probably the last one he talks about, but for tax purposes, he wants to see your income statement and your balance sheet. For sure. So I've heard him so many times when he's working with clients looking at those documents. They are the most important financial documents that a business has. And while you may say, well, I'm not really a numbers person, I promise you, you're going to want to understand those documents because it's going to be the health of your business that you're looking at, right? Understanding those financial documents is going to make you a better business leader, a better business employee as you look at those. Okay. Finally, number 20, when a product is damaged, a sales allowance deduction is created. A sales allowance deduction is created. And that's when obviously we talked a little bit about discounts and refunds being deductions. Well, this is just giving that when the product is damaged, this is the type of deduction that we call it. It's a sales allowance deduction. Well, friends, I hope this has helped you with the vocabulary for week one. I think there is some really good information here as you look at how what these words mean and how they apply again to our personal and our professional life. So thanks so much. I appreciate your time.